I'd like to welcome you all to CCMA's Technology Subcommittee's session on small faith groups, raising the bar and going deeper. This webinar is presented by our campus minister and CCMA member, Greg Ramzinski, director of St. Elizabeth's Catholic Student Center at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. So we appreciate Greg's being here with us today, and we appreciate all of you joining us here today. I will now turn the presentation over to Greg. As we switch over here, just give us 1 second. Okay, Greg, you should have control right now. And it would probably be a good idea if I unmute the presenter. Oh, Greg, there you are.
I am here.
Welcome. Thank you so much on behalf of CCMA. And I'm going to, if you would just put your screen PowerPoint up to full size presentation.
It just reset when you gave me control. So hold on.
I'm sure it did.
All right, let's go.
And then whenever you're ready, we'll get started, and we are recording.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank everyone for being here. Frank, thank you for all your background and your support, and hopefully I don't mess up this technology because, as my friends tell me, I know enough just to be dangerous. So, as Frank said, I am the Director of Campus Ministry at Texas Tech University. I've been here at Tech I'm starting my 9th year, so it's been very exciting, and I've done a wide variety of things through ministry, but specifically talking about small faith groups, raising the bar, and going deeper. Now, I know the slide you're looking at says small faith groups leading others to purpose and goal. This is a modification of a slideshow that I do with my small faith group leaders. So let's just dive right in and get to it.
Greg, before you begin, if you would just reset your screen to the single view, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Did that do it?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Let's just not rehearse anymore. How's that?
That better?
There we go. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So, let's just define what we're doing first and foremost, talking about a small faith group. And most of this is, I like to figure out, so we're all starting on the same page. A small faith group is an intentional face-to-face gathering varying in size and meeting regularly to accomplish an agreed upon purpose. And so I'm going to do some basic stuff starting off, and then we'll get more in depth about small faith groups and such on how we can get them to go deeper. One of the things that I really am challenged with personally as a campus minister is making the and especially in larger campus ministries and as the campus ministry grows, is what does it mean to be a leader versus what does it mean to be a manager? Leaders are responsible for helping their members identify their purpose, for guiding the group toward the vision. And so to be a small group leader, that's exactly what they are. They are interacting, or we are interacting directly with the 6 to 8 to 10 people in the small group to guide them toward a vision. And we'll talk more about the different visions that are present in small faith groups later. But being a manager is hopefully what we are doing as campus ministers, is that we are empowering the students that we interact with and work with and minister with, giving them the vision for the ministry to recruit, train, support, and supervise the small faith group leaders. That's a difficult thing for a lot of people to do that I've found, is that campus ministers going into a ministry situation or in a ministry situation saying, okay, I need to be everything to everyone and do everything for everyone and be present to everyone. Presence is key, but we need to make that transition as campus ministers to be the manager of small groups, where we are training others to interact and lead the small faith groups themselves. And we'll get more into that a little bit later as well. Believe it or not, there is a cycle to a small faith group. I've heard of small faith groups, and this is primarily in parish settings because we are at a university parish, Our small faith group has been in existence for 8 years. Our small group has been in existence for 5 years. And we need to realize as we either begin to establish or as we continue to look at our small groups that there is a cycle to small group ministry. And I'm going to talk about each one of these briefly. Belonging, risking deeper emotional involvement than available elsewhere. Part of being in a small group where we're interacting with 6, 8, 10 people, as we get to know those people, or as that small group gets to know each other, they are going to risk deeper emotional involvement. And that environment in that small group needs to lend itself to that circumstance to where there is a emotional commitment and emotional involvement that is deeper than other places that they can find. Providing a place where people can identify with others. Typically, those that are looking to engage in a small group are looking for some type of commonality, some type of place where there is something similar about them that they find in someone else. And then placing a person in an environment, or they find an environment in which they can be known and understood as distinct persons. It's hard for an introvert to remain purely an introvert in a small group, because as part of belonging to that small group, that introvert will need to be interacting and sharing who they are. And I'm sure there are people that are on this call, as well as I have led a small faith group that the majority of them are introverts. And I'll say it now, and I'll probably say it again later, is a small faith, if there's silence in a small faith group, it's not a bad thing. Having silence there can be a good thing because it's allowing people to listen, to process, and to prepare whatever they may want to say. And so having a small faith group that's made up, or a small group made up of introverts, is there going to be a lot of silence? Yes. But when that silence is broken, profound statements can be made. Support. Affirming people even when they feel useless and uninvolved. Not everyone has a great day. Not everyone is at the top of their game every day of every moment of every year. And so there are people that need affirmation during various times in the cycle of life. And so the small group is a great place for a person to be affirmed and be supported. On the other side of that same coin is the group need to be able to give support in times of pain and times of change. I know right now I've got a lot of students that have graduated and they're moving on to a different chapter in their life that's similar that everyone on this call does. That's one of the part of the life cycle of campus ministry. But I did have a young man come in yesterday that is realizing the changes that are taking in his life as with his friendships, and all of his friends, especially the ones he's been in a small group with for the last 4 years, are moving on. And he's a Lubbock native, so he'll remain in Lubbock, and he's already got a job and all that kind of fun stuff. But those people that he's been able to interact once a week with for the last 4 years are not going to be readily present to him physically. Yes, he can keep in contact with them electronically, but it's really not the same thing. And so that's a time of deep change, and that's something that he and I have been talking about. But even the members in that small group can help each other to process that deep change, even though they're not meeting as a group. And that's probably a topic for another time. Providing a place for people to interact and voice their opinions as well as build friendships. Those small groups need to be places where people can freely express their opinions. And all of us know that those best friends that we have, that we've built up over the years, you know, they are willing to share their opinions with us and we with them. But these small groups, the opinions can be expressed and not ridiculed, because that's part of accepting a person for who they are. Going back to that first slide of where you're building a support or building. Transformation. Facilitating healing. We as human beings are broken. Some of us are a lot more broken than others. And so part of being in a small group is that the healing process can begin and can continue to happen, creating a context of trust where people grow to trust each other and they grow to build a friendship and come to know each other on a much deeper level, which facilitates the transformation of opening up to others, encouraging the sharing of experiences, and prayer. And so part of we as Catholic campus ministers incorporating the prayer aspect into a small group where we open with a prayer, where we close with a prayer. I've been involved with small groups and leading small groups where at the beginning of the small group, people don't want to pray out loud or don't want to pray publicly. We're in the group itself and, trying to pray with 5 other people or 6 other people, if that's a hard thing to do, that's something that they can work on to grow to be able to do that. And maybe that time of prayer is saying grace before a meal, if the group meets for a meal, or it's asking for someone to lead a prayer, and it's really up to them to take ownership of that and take the challenge of helping them to transform and grow deeper in their faith, to express their prayer and express their faith verbally. Developing habits to encourage a deepening of faith. Being able to discuss our prayer, as many of you or all of you are probably well aware of, a lot of our college students that we work with cannot express their faith. Or if they are able to express their faith, it's on a very elementary or junior high level. They haven't developed the habit or the process or the ability or the language to express their faith as a Catholic adult needs to be able to express their faith. And I would even dare say that many people sitting in the pews cannot do that. If we go through and just look at the creed and, part of the changes that happen with the Mass, what does transubstantiation, what does the incarnation, what does it mean when we talk about various aspects? What does it mean if a person can explain the Trinity? How do you explain what it means that Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, 3 persons in one God? That's a very adult explanation of Catholicism. And I could get on a pedestal about that, but don't have time for that either. But also giving people the freedom to fail. This is something that is a hard thing to do, to allow young people to fail. And those of us that are parents, it's a very hard thing for us to allow our child to fail, but as we know, that's a part of the growing process. And if a young person is not given that opportunity to fail, then how are they going to experience transformation and growth? Because in the failure, part of being a part of that small group is to support them in that failure and to help them see beyond it. Accountability. Small groups are a great environment to hold other people accountable, where individuals can track the behavior consistently. Because hopefully a small group is going to be meeting for a year and a half, part of that life cycle of the small group. And so people's behavior could change and grow and deepen as that goes through. Allowing people to hear others talk about the struggle, strategy, and perspectives on a given issue. No 2 people have the same opinion about any type of circumstance or situation in the world. And so allowing people to talk about a struggle they may have and how they're trying to overcome it. What are some strategies? And those strategies can be presented to the small group, and the small group can support them and say, if you need more money, and you need more money to, get a car payment to buy a new car. And so maybe the best situation is not to go out and rob a bank. Maybe the situation is getting another job, or cutting the cable, or getting a less expensive cell phone, or strategies and circumstances where they're running those ideas by in an environment where they know the responses they get are going to be open and honest and accepted for what they are. Praying about and listening to a person's growth as he or she pursues goals in life. Working with college students is a challenging thing at times. And as these young adults that we work with seek to grow and prepare to move on to that next level out into the real world, what are their goals? What are they seeking to do with their life? How are they going to stay involved with the church? How is their faith going to interact with their faith life? How hard is it to find a church that they're going to be going to if they're moving to another city in your state or moving out of state? I know I was chatting with a young lady a couple months ago. She's got a degree in accounting, and she's been very faithful in her faith life, but she's worried about finding a church that's going to accept her as a young adult in the city she's moving to. And she wants to remain active, and she wants to remain a part of the church, which God willing she will, but part of her being active in the church is plugging into more than just going to liturgy. And so discussing that in a small faith group or a small group, and having people in that group that have been friends of hers for the last year, year and a half, calling and checking on her and saying, how is the church hunt going? Or, hey, I've got a cousin living in that city. Why don't you go to church with them? And so praying and listening and helping a person achieve the goals in their life. Bringing in outside resources that help group members educate one another on issues and agreed upon goals. Someone that's having trouble maintaining a budget in their life. Because as we know, college students are excellent in maintaining budgets. And so if maybe someone in that small group is having a hard time with that, maybe someone else's father or mother in that small group is an accountant, and they can help them plan a budget, and help them to achieve holding on to that goal and maintaining a budget in their life. And these are just one of many examples I'm sure we could all come up with of how outside resources can be brought in to help a student remain accountable to themselves, but also to members of the group. This is probably one of the hardest things in the life cycle of a small group, is the risk-taking aspect. Because the first person to take a risk in a small group is the one that's going to start taking that group to a deeper level. But they have the ability to risk something new in a supportive environment with a low emotional cost. Somebody's having a difficulty in their life that they're going to need to overcome. Say they're struggling with the church, with one of the teachings of the church, and they need some people aren't willing to admit that. For example, maybe they're having difficulty with reconciling the church's teaching on the death penalty and the execution of a hardened criminal. Sharing that with the small group can help that small group to know that person better, but also to help them see, oh, well, this is something I struggle with as well. But the individual that's willing to share that, they know within the context of that small group there is a low emotional cost for them. The ability to gain feedback from others about a risk, idea, or action. That's pretty much self-explanatory. To grow in confidence through the support of the group. When trying to make a tough decision for the good that they're going, come to a deeper understanding. Say they're talking about getting engaged. It's a wonderful thing in the life of a young adult. But maybe they don't feel they're ready. Sharing that with the small group can help that person see, maybe I am ready to get married. Watch others model the same type of action and learning from their style and approach. Maybe someone in the small group has a fantastic prayer life that someone else would like to model and emulate and become more like. And so talking one-on-one or talking within the context of the small group saying, I'd really like to grow deeper in my prayer life. How can I do that? And taking that person on and challenging them, both the prayer and the one seeking to grow deeper, to help them to each grow deeper in their faith life. Receive encouragement to keep trying when their first attempts are disappointing or frightening. As everyone on the call probably knows, that when we try to grow in our faith life, sometimes we're disappointed. When we try and better ourselves, there are times when we're disappointed. Let's think back to January 1st, 2014, all those New Year's resolutions we made. How many of those resolutions are we keeping? I know I've dropped all mine. But being a part of a small group is receiving the encouragement to say, maybe you dropped the ball in February on going to the gym every day. Yes, I know it's June, but why don't you start going to the gym and pick it back up again? And we encourage you in that. Goes back to the accountability thing. Unity and comfort within the group encourages people to take greater risks in growth. Say a young adult is challenged to go on a retreat. They're invited to explore the possibility of a vocation to the priesthood and the religious life. They've been invited by their pastor to do that. And that individual says, well, I don't know if I need to do that or not, because if word gets out that I'm studying for the priesthood or the religious life, I'll never get a date again. I've actually had students tell me that too. So the group can encourage them to say, just because you're going on the retreat doesn't mean that you're committed for the rest of your life. To take that challenge to explore further options for a vocation for the rest of their life. Synergy. The commitment of members is greater when they work together. As we all know, in an example I just mentioned, if we try to go to the gym on our own, it's a pretty hard thing to do. Or we try to grow deeper in our faith, or we try to challenge ourselves to grow in some way, it's a hard thing to do by ourselves. But if we let 2 or 3 or 4 other people know, or we tell our small group that, hey, this is a challenge that I'm seeking to accomplish, they are there to support, and they are there to encourage, and they are there to help us achieve that goal. The motivation of people is greater as a group. I don't know about everyone listening, but I would much rather be encouraged and motivated by a group of people than by one person. Sure, motivation by one person is fantastic, but even think about what it would be like to be on the field during one of the greatest sporting events in history. I mean, well, pick any of the number of Super Bowl, World Series, World Cup, the Olympics. Think about the energy that is gained by those athletes, by the people in the crowd. And so even though the crowd may be 5, 6, 7 people, then the motivation is there, and it's going to encourage us to keep pushing on to achieve our goals. There's room for people to share their gifts and challenges. Sharing our gifts is easy. Sharing our challenges is a lot more difficult at times. So if one person in the small group shares their challenge, then others are going to be more willing to share the challenges they're facing as well. Problem solving brings a greater number of ideas and possible solutions. As you can see, these are all interrelated. It's part of the cycle of small groups. Representation of a variety of personalities and perspectives. Allowing different members to play different roles in the process. Summarizing, proposer, questioner, critic, etc. Every person in the small group, depending on the situation, is going to play 1, 2, or more of these roles, along with many other roles that we could sit here and listen. But the people in the group are going to help the individual to grow deeper by listening to the various roles of the people in the small group. Finding a solution agreeable to a larger body. Sometimes we have a challenge finding a single solution for a goal that we are seeking, or a way to get to that goal. So running our ideas by a larger group can help us to make that final decision. Okay, onward to growing deeper, and that's the introduction. So let's get a little bit deeper here. 3 rules of small groups. All small groups have multiple agendas. Some of you may be thinking, well, no, our small group is to study the Bible. Great, that is a great goal or a great agenda for that group to achieve. But what do you mean you have different agendas? I'll come back to that in a little bit. All small groups have life cycles. One thing we've got to remember as a leader of a small faith group or small group or a manager of a small group is that there is a life cycle to the group. That whatever the agenda has been determined by the group to be, there is a process to get and complete that agenda. It's difficult to maintain a perpetual small group for very long periods of time, because in my experience, there is a time when that small group isn't going any deeper, because the agenda that was initially proposed or initially agreed upon has been completed, and then the group can become lost and stagnant, and it's a group meeting to hang out, for lack of a better term. All groups need relationship building. Part of growing in a small group and growing deeper within a small group is that relationship building has to occur. If members in the group are not willing to share a part of who they are on a deeper level, then the group is not going to grow and the agendas that have been agreed upon won't be achieved. Small group leaders. Small group leaders are committed. Self-explanatory. Consistently asking if the tasks of leading, caring, and learning are being accomplished. That's something a small group leader has to consistently ask himself or herself is, am I leading this group? Is the group caring about each other member of the community, of the group? And are we learning something? Are we seeking to accomplish our agenda? Are we seeking to fulfill the goal that we set for ourselves? Which leads into keeping in mind where the group is going and keeping it moving in that direction. And keeping the goal group moving in that direction is essential to accomplishing the agenda. Because if the goal is not kept in front of the group, then that group once again is going to become stagnant. Something small group leaders do not need, and this is a list that I put together over years from various resources and from leading groups, is a leader does not need a master's in theology. A leader just needs to be capable of focusing the resources that are found on the agenda. The small group leader doesn't need the gift of gab. And I will admit I have the gift of gab, and those of you that know me will affirm to that. But I think personally that the small group leader needs to be the one that speaks the least in the small group. But a small group leader does need a strong vision, because as a leader, they need to, once again, keep the goal in mind to fulfill the points of the agenda. Well, having a strong vision meaning, well, scratch that, what I just said. They don't need a strong vision because the goal has already been set. They aren't trying to determine what the goal will be. It does not need a dynamic personality. They don't need to be an extrovert. They don't need to be a comedian. They don't need to be someone that can get up in front of 100 people. Remember, a small group will only be about 6 to 8 people, maybe 10 at the outmost. And I've got several small group leaders here at Tech that are introverts, and that was a challenge in their faith life. Is from their small group challenged them to lead a small group on their own, and they did. And as I said, the small group leader, in my opinion, should be the one that speaks the least in that confines of that group. They do not need a huge library. They don't need access to all the resources of the Vatican Library in order to lead the group. They just need the basic resources to accomplish their agenda. They don't need all the answers or the profound answers to life's questions. If I'm in a small group and my small group leader knows all the answers, how is that helping me to grow? It's not. They don't need large amounts of free time because, as I said, the small group needs to remember that it does have a life cycle. And yes, preparing to lead a small group does take a little bit of time, but keeping to the agenda and keeping the goal in mind will help that group leader to focus on exactly what needs to happen in the small group. Minimum leadership tasks. As a small group leader, review the covenant which the group has agreed upon. And this is something I get all of my small group leaders to do at the beginning of their small faith group is to agree on a covenant. And that covenant is designed within the small group itself. Now I've got a worksheet that I go over with them and help them to design that covenant, which we can make available somehow. I'll let the technology people worry about that. But what is the covenant? We want to come to a deeper understanding of the Gospel of John. Okay, there's a covenant. Now the Gospel of John, as we know, is a deep book, but okay, maybe we just want to come to a deeper understanding of the first chapter of the Gospel of John. Or one of my small faith groups with my women of faith, they spent a semester examining John Paul II's letter to women. They spent it and they read it and they discussed it. which is a great resource and a great way to grow in faith with each other. Set some goals, not only goals for the lifetime of the small faith group or the small group, but set individual goals for the meeting. At the end of this meeting, we want to get through the first 2 paragraphs of John Paul II's letter to women. That's a goal to accomplish, but also helping the young ladies realize that, okay, you need to read that before you come to the meeting. Now, I didn't lead that group, just so you know, but like with our one of our men's small faith groups, sitting down and talking about theology of the body. As we all know, that's a very vast topic. But, okay, how does that pertain specifically to dating? But how does that pertain to specifically courting a young lady? There's an open topic of conversation that can last a month. But setting goals specifically for a particular meeting. Planning the meeting in order to move toward the goals of the covenant. Self-explanatory. Pray. This one, I have to tell my small faith group leaders this, even though it's something that we all know we need to do. Just affirming, don't forget to pray about the meeting and the participants, and let's pray for ourselves. That's one of the things that, talking with the students that are in small faith groups, that when they're first starting their small faith group, if they've never been in one before, they typically have a hard time praying for themselves because they see it as selfish. They feel they need to be praying for something else. But telling them, it's okay to pray for yourself. So don't forget, do it. Pray for yourself. Guide. Move the meeting toward the set goals. Going back to the goals that you set earlier in the meeting. Debrief. Review the outcome of the meeting with a peer leader or spiritual director. It's so important, and I really encourage all of my students, especially my leaderships, to get a spiritual director. Have someone that you can talk with one-on-one on a deeper level to process, to debrief, to talk about what's going on in your prayer life. And if a small faith group leader has a spiritual director, or they should, this should be one of the points of conversation, is what's going on in the small group. Follow up. Be sure and follow up with those not at the meeting or those who were silent or withdrawn in unresolved conflicts or special needs. Having the follow-up, for me personally, is one of the hardest things to do, because I'm always trying to push forward and move forward and do, what do I need to do next? But following up with not only members in the small groups, well, especially since we're talking about small groups, following up with them will help the entire group go to that deeper level, will help them grow closer together, because they need to be able to grow deeper, and not only the leader following up with each other, but also following up with each other, but also following up with the leader.
Greg, excuse me, this is Frank. Could we stop for a moment? We have a question from Sister Kathy.
Yes.
Sister, you can go ahead.
My question, and I guess my question goes back really when you're talking about setting an agenda, and maybe that can come afterwards. Can you give me an example of what an agenda would look like there?
An agenda for a specific meeting?
Or for a specific group, like if I'm putting together a faith sharing group.
Okay.
And that might be from your past experience. Where have you, what has been an example of that?
For example, like I usually talking with the late, and this is I wasn't with my Women of Faith group. It's a group of young ladies, college young ladies, and they're led by their peers, typically juniors and seniors. But what I did is, what the leaders decided and the members decided, we want to study John Paul II's letter to women.
Okay.
That was their ultimate goal. So what I did was sit down with the leaderships, and we took the letter and we broke it down. Okay, if we're going to have 15 weeks in the semester, we broke that letter to women down into 15 parts. And so and that was basically the general agenda, and then each small group leader would take parts of that, say like part 1 in the first session, say it was 5 paragraphs. They would look at those 5 paragraphs and they would tell their small group, okay, we're going to cover the first 5 paragraphs, or I need you to read the first 5 paragraphs for our small group meeting. We're going to focus on 2 sentences that impacted you in those 5 paragraphs.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thanks,
Okay.
Greg.
Thank
And
you.
if anybody else has questions, please feel free to send them over. We'll be going into that momentarily. Thanks, Greg. I'll turn it back to you.
Oh, no problem. And so, yeah, I just noticed your little questions over here. But but anyway, so it's a matter of starting with, okay, what is our ultimate goal going to be? Okay, we want to study this church document. And as we all know, church documents are various lengths. But getting them something relevant to them. And I'll get in more into resources and things like that here toward the end. Types of small groups. Task-oriented. Are they seeking to accomplish an agreed upon task? Okay, our small group is, we're going to grow in a deeper understanding of the rosary. And so what we want to do during this semester is we want to learn the various ways to pray the rosary, learn the history of the rosary, get to know everything there is to know about the rosary. And so finding out, what does it mean to pray a decade of the rosary? What does it mean to pray a full rosary, where you pray all joyful, sorrowful, luminous, and glorious mysteries? What does all that mean? And so maybe that's the task that the group has set themselves to. Need-oriented small group range from preventative, supportive, or therapeutic. Maybe putting together a small group that is having issues with some type of substance abuse. And maybe that's not something specifically we in a campus ministry are equipped with, but we as a campus ministry can partner with a university that has the resources, but we can host them on our site if we have the space. Or we can host it on campus and say, Catholic Student Ministry is going to be, and obviously advertising is, how do you advertise? We're going to be hosting those of you that have issues with substance abuse, we're going to be hosting a seminar and followed by development of small groups but you see where I'm going with that. It's a need-oriented small group, and those can be done. Learning together. Do you focus on a specific topic, curriculum, or other study material? Are you going to do a book study? Do a study on Thomas Merton, looking at his life and looking at the public, or what he wrote throughout his life, looking at Thomas Aquinas, or getting as specific as, okay, let's look at one chapter of the Catechism, and we'll spend the semester really going into depth on that. Being together, relationship-oriented groups focusing on a specific interest or reason. Believe it or not, we have a small group that meets here that they get together and they knit. It's a group of college students that have learned from their mothers or grandmothers, and they spend talking about where God is working in their lives, but they do it while knitting. So the knitting is what brought them together, but they're growing in their faith because of a shared interest. Mixed agenda, dividing their time between several of the above types. I can't do any better explanation than that. Designing a small group, using a covenant to design your group. Setting a covenant among the members of the group itself to where, what we discuss here needs to remain within the small group. But part of that covenant needs to be the understanding that if someone in the group shares something that they're going to, for example, they're going to be doing harm to themselves or to someone else, the group leader can go outside of the group to let that be known or take action upon that type of thing. Because as members of the laity, or as non-priests, and not with that, when we're not in the sacrament of reconciliation, we're not bound by that seal. Only our beloved priests are. So, and I can talk more on that if there's specific questions on that. Deciding on parameters. I have small groups that meet every week. I have small groups that meet twice a month. deciding on how often are we going to meet, where are we going to meet, are we going to meet in the same place all the time, are we going to rotate different people's apartments, are we going to just meet at the church, we're going to meet from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., or are we going to meet from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Letting that group decide on parameters, writing the covenant out, and letting everyone be a part of the writing of that covenant. Yep. Back up. So that's getting that small group together and having them agree on these are the parameters and this is the covenant that we're going to use. Materials. Begin with the basics. Something that I use with students coming in, I start with Empowered by the Spirit or Sons and Daughters of the Light, starting with, church documents. And I get students that are from Catholic schools that want to dive into that. Students that are very basic in their faith, we'll start with part 4 of the Catechism on prayer, because everyone has had an experience of prayer. So, and the catechism is readily available both in hard copy but also on the phone or via apps and such. So they can get access to a catechism. Start with a scripture study, those that want to start with the scriptures. Maybe start in the book of Mark, the shortest gospel that we have. Starting there and praying your way through that gospel. Using resources that are available, church documents, encyclicals, the catechism. We all have access to catechisms in one way or another. Everyone that has internet access has access to all the church documents. And so you don't have to go out and buy a bunch of books to have small groups. But go back to the purpose of the group. What has the group decided that they want to learn more about, they want to pray about, they want to grow in? And so, you can do small groups and not spend any amount of money to have those small groups going. I know I seem like I've kind of rambled all over the place, but I stuck to my slideshow, so that's a good thing. I just want to thank Frank for doing the technology side of it. Krista asked me to ask y'all to let you know that they'll be sending out an evaluation. Please complete the form and return it to CCMA so they can continue to meet the needs of campus ministers there. I guess, if anything, what I would like you to take away from this is, in order to get the students to go deeper, challenge them to grow. Challenge them to not only grow if you're leading the small group, but as a manager and you've got your small group leaders to challenge the other ones to grow. And it's through that challenge that transformation is going to occur, that cycle will continue, because through transformation they'll feel like they belong and all of the other points will be met. And just remember that there is a cycle to it, and there's no particular place that is a starting point. And so that's what I like about that diagram. I can get back to it. Is that people can come in at any part in the cycle. If they're looking for support, if they're looking to grow, if they're looking for accountability, they're looking to take a risk, synergy, they're looking to solve a problem, or they're looking to belong. Anywhere in there that can grow. So that's all I have. I hope it's helped. If you have any questions, let's open it up for questions. If you think of a question later, you can email me. My email is gramzinski@gmail.com. I think it's on the CCMA site, and it's also in the books and such. So that's all I've got.
All right. Well, Greg, thank you. I know as a campus minister myself, I gained some very interesting insights on what you had to present, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure all of us at CCMA do also. So at this point, let me turn it over for questions. You can either send them over in writing, or you can hit your hand button, and I'll be glad to open up your microphone and can tackle some questions in the remaining time that we have. I think you did such a great job, Greg, that we do have a question. Sorry.
I know I didn't do that well.
All right, Paul, go ahead. I think Paul. No, Paul, you're unmuted. Go ahead, please. That's Paul's stage. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Paul. Thank you.
All right, sorry. when you were talking through this, it sounds an awful lot like you have lots and lots of different kinds of small groups. Is that the case? Do you find that that works where you can have one small group that does a book study, one small group that studies catechism, one small group that reads the second letter of Paul? Do you have all these different kind of groups?
Yes, because we've got over 600 active students. So we're that's why I brought it. That's why I put the slide in there of leader versus manager, because I've had to go. I mean, I love leading small groups, but having that many students, I've had to empower my various student leaders that have been involved in various ways, various capacities, and training them to be small group leaders. Because last semester we had about a dozen small groups. So yes, it's a challenge to kind of coordinate all of that, but part of empowering them is to say, okay, this is your baby, go.
And does each group gets the same sort of training from you as the manager?
Yes. I meet with them at the very beginning of the semester, and we go through a similar slideshow to what y'all just received to help prepare them to take that leadership role of a small group.
Okay.
Great. Paul, could you give us some background on Texas Tech, size of population, et cetera, just so everybody kind of relates to their own?
Oh, you mean me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant...
But Paul, yes, let's hear about
that would be you, Greg, and Paul will come back to you on that. Thanks.
Texas Tech has 33,000 students. We have, like I said, about 600 active students, and I define active as doing something other than coming to Mass on Sunday. And so we have 6 organizations within the Student Center itself. We have the Catholic Student Association, which is our recognized student organization on campus. We have Cairo, which is our co-ed service fraternity. We have the Diocesan Youth Retreat Team, where they go out and do ministry for high school and junior high students around the diocese. We have a college council, the Knights of Columbus. We have Raider Awakening, which is our college retreat program. And then we have our Women of Faith group.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Any other questions? Thank you, Paul, for being brave.
That's right. If you're looking for there's a hand that you can just push that'll let us know that you have a question if you did not hear that part of the presentation at the beginning. Oh, here, everybody's finding their hands now. All right, Amy, you've been on the longest, so I'm going to unmute you here. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I just wanted to get the email address again because I feel like my question is a little bit more specific to my personal ministry. So I was wondering if would that be okay?
Yes, it's GRAM as in Michael, ZIN as in Nancy, SAI at gmail.com.
Okay, very easy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Albert, you're up next.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that I know, I lost you for the first 5-10 minutes, so I don't know if this might be addressed at that time. But it seems that one of the things that you didn't mention is about confidentiality of the group. If you're not involved in small groups, that was one of the key things that people emphasize.
Right. Your question is about confidentiality within the group?
Correct.
Yes. I mentioned that a little bit right at the end when the established covenant of the group, to where confidentiality is something that will be written into the covenant itself. And there has to be the understanding within that group that confidence will be maintained. But the small group leader also needs to make it known that if something is shared within the group that would cause harm to another person or to themselves, that the confidence cannot be maintained. Because is someone that says that, I just need to let you know because you're a wonderful group of people, but I'm going to go out and do harm to myself, that small group leader needs to take action so that that person is prevented from harming themselves. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Thank
Okay.
you. All right, Mike.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
Yeah, we're looking at having a bunch of not a bunch, but probably about just several small groups to kind of kick off the school year, especially aimed at freshmen.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're all going to kind of have a similar focus. And I didn't know if you had any thoughts as to just the best way to form the leaders. Would you put them all, bring them all in and have like a retreat for the leaders at the beginning of the year, or what ways have you found that work well with that?
Absolutely. I would get all the leaders together and definitely train them, because I hate throwing people to the wolves. But getting them together and saying, it's part of the responsibility of leading a small group is very important, and help the leaders realize that getting this group together is not just a once a week or twice a month time to hang out and share your stories as a leader. As I said before, my personal opinion is, and I tell my small group leaders this, is that they should be doing the least amount of speaking and the most amount of listening. I mean, that's part of the goals of guiding and keeping the group on track. But also part of having a small group leader is that if a person wants to dominate the conversation, saying, let's let so-and-so speak a little bit because, we've enjoyed what you've shared, but we need to hear from other people.
Okay, great, thanks.
Uh-huh.
We're going to go to Esther, and then I have a written question that will be coming right after that. So, Esther, one moment. Okay.
I don't have the...
You're okay.
You're okay. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my gosh! Okay, I didn't know I had that working. I'm sorry. Okay. How do you retain students in the group? How do you get them to commit and they're going to come every week and they don't, come and go or drop out over the course of the semester, over the course of the year? And along with that, retaining the quality of the group over the course of the semester and year, making sure it's still a quality experience.
The retention of you're asking about retention also maintaining quality. The retention of members, that's part written into the covenant as well, is when the whole group gets there and writes the covenant together, is that, as a member of this small group, I'm going to participate in each of the weekly meetings. Now, there will be the understanding that, okay, for example, here at Tech, chemistry exams are on Wednesday nights. And so obviously if they have an exam, they can't be at the small group if the group meets on Wednesday nights. There's the understanding of saying, okay, I may have to miss one or two sessions, but I'm going to commit to participation in this group. And that's part of, having them be accountable, but it's also it's accountability for the individual, but also an accountability for the whole group. The second one is, how do you maintain or keep it fresh and keep them growing and keep it consistent, is that falls to the small group leader, to where that leader, based upon the goal that the group set at the beginning, that group leader needs to go through and say, okay, we need to keep things moving forward. Because I know I've been involved in small groups where we talk about the same thing every time. And finally it's going to the leader and saying, we need to keep moving forward. We need to we're seeking to achieve a certain goal. And by keeping that goal in mind and setting the agenda for the, say, semester, but also setting a specific agenda for each meeting, we'll keep that meetings fresh and keep it moving forward. Does that help?
One second. There was some reverb there, so I muted her. So let me put her up again. Okay, you're on. Yes.
How do you keep a group from becoming too academic when you use things like encyclicals and other materials that might be very intellectual?
Well, I think it goes to the what is the set goal for the group? Do they want to analyze it in a faith-based, or do they want to seek to analyze it in an academic manner? Because I've had small groups with nothing but engineers in it that want to pick it apart for the intellectual side of it. Looking at how does this apply to the engineering world, versus others that say, okay, we want to look at this on it from a faith-based perspective. And if the small group leader is having a difficult time maintaining focus, then going to his spiritual director or having them come to me and say, how can I refocus us back to the faith-based side of it versus the intellectual side of it? That's really a case-by-case basis based upon what the agenda has been set by the group.
Unmuted. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Greg, I have a question here that came over. 1 second, let me
Yes.
just mute this out. Question from Trung, my friend Trung over at Elon, I believe. And Greg, you mentioned that a small group leader doesn't need to be someone who can get up in front of people. For a ministry really only starting small groups, would you say that's still the case? Or do you need someone who can get up there, excuse me, and be comfortable and invite people to initially join?
Well, you'll need someone that's able to get up in front and invite people to join initially. To if you're going to speak to the congregation or you're going to speak to a large group of students or a gathering of students. But I was specifically saying that, let me clarify, that the person leading the small group does not need to be able to be doesn't have to be an extrovert. It doesn't need to be that person that's comfortable in speaking in front of 100 people. It's okay, and it's a challenge process for them and a growth opportunity for them to maybe lead a group of 6 people, and that's 6 meaning them and 5 others. And I've never met a student that wasn't able to sit and talk with 5 other students about a common topic. So.
Okay, Trung, if that's fine, if you have further question, I can just raise your hand, please. We're going to go to Robert. Go ahead, please, Robert.
Hi, Craig. I was wondering, as manager, have you ever had small group for your leaders?
Not specifically for the leaders, because the leaders, in that they're leading a group, don't have time to be in a group of their own, because they're typically involved with several other things going on within campus ministry or on campus.
Okay, I was just wondering if that might be helpful for them.
I mean, I meet with them one-on-one to just say, how are things going? Is everything okay? And that just to help them know that I'm there to support them, and if they have any issues, they know they can come to me. And I would love to be able to do that with them, and I tried to do that several years ago, and it just time-wise didn't work out.
Didn't work out. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? See, Robert, I think we just went through. Excuse me. All right, let me just open up Krista here from CCMA and open up Esther from the technology subgroup, and if you have anything they'd like to add or say to the
Unmuted.
Hello, it's Krista.
Hello, Krista.
I was just eating popcorn.
I'm sorry, Krista. You have to turn down your microphone, please. Oh, your speakers.
I know. What's that? Echo.
Okay. No, we're still picking up my talking through your speakers, I believe, and then through your microphone back out again.
Hello. Hello. Are we still there?
Yep.
Oh, you can? Oh.
Now we can hear you. Go ahead, Krista.
Well, thank you, Greg. That was wonderful.
Thank you very much.
I really enjoyed it, and I learned some things. I think it was really great. It makes me want to go out and start a small group myself.
Oh, you can come out to the University of Massachusetts anytime you like.
I will book my ticket now.
Okay. Sorry, Greg. I know you have a lot more students, but
I can
That's
come out
okay.
that way too, Greg.
Esther, do you have anything you'd like to add? Anybody else have any questions?
Just thank you so much, Greg, for volunteering to lead us, and please everyone just be as open as you can be in your evaluation so we can plan further webinars to meet your needs. And if anybody would like to be a presenter, please also volunteer yourself.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, all the hands are going up. I can see them. I'm only
They
kidding.
are? Who's volunteering?
Well,
Quick, write
everybody,
that down.
thank you. Thank especially Greg for preparing the presentation for today and CCMA for hosting this webinar. We will be converting this program into a play video so that you'll be able to view it from the CCMA website within a day or so. So again, if there are no other questions, we will say thank you. Have a great summer. Enjoy your time off if you have it. And we'll speak to you at the next seminar. Do we have a date on the next seminar, Krista, by any chance, or just a preview? No?
We do not have one for August. We are in the process of confirming that, but we do have a September date,
Great.
and that is going to be the 18th of September at 3 p.m. Eastern Time.
Awesome.
And we will be learning about the Esteem program.
Oh, great.
Cool.
And then in October, we have the 15th, and we will, at 2 p.m. Eastern, and we will be learning about developing leaders and different leadership models for campus ministry.
Excellent.
So once we get the August date firmed up in the topic, we will be sending that out on the calendar so that everybody can see what we have coming up, and we'll keep that out there for everybody.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, thank you all again, and keep watching for the upcoming sessions. And again, thank you all. Have yourself a great day. Signing off.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Frank. Thank you.